also the outsourced development organization, to have access to that through a VPN. Now, that can work, and we've certainly seen that work with a lot of clients. In some cases, if there are infrastructure problems that create issues with the reliability of getting VPN'd in, then that can create a larger set of efficiency issues that could very well occur. The other thing that you got to think about, as I mentioned before, is this issue of data, and anonymization of data. Now, time would not allow a complete discussion of that. Certainly planning on having some sort of webinar on that at some point or another, because this is becoming an ever-increasing issue for our clients. But the short version is that when you've got data that has private information in it and it's getting sent around the world, people tend to get pretty concerned about that. And so the idea of anonymizing the data comes up, and there are some tools now that are emerging that will do the anonymization. But when you start talking about systems of systems, such as what you would have in a bank, you just start to run into some real problems with that, because what you'll have is 2, 5, 10, 20 different data repositories that are shared across 50, 100 applications, and they have data that's related. So, John Brown and information associated with John Brown, a particular person who's a customer of the bank, could be in all of these different disparate data stores. And if the anonymization tool changes John Brown to be Dorothy Smith in one of these repositories, but to be Chaim Weizmann in another one, then you've now broken that linkage. You've got no way of relating those records anymore. And of course, in the systems of systems, that's very important that you be able to do that kind of end-to-end system integration testing. So this is one of the great challenges, is how to anonymize data to allow for the successful outsourcing of testing in such a way that doesn't compromise privacy. I have a question from Susan. Can we get a copy of the presentation via the website? Absolutely. It is on the website, rbcs-us.com, on the basic library page. Look at the, I think it's called Testing and Outsourced Projects, and it's a PDF that's posted there, so you can download it and take a look at it. A question from Brian. Is the use of a webcam an acceptable substitute for meeting the testing organization in person? Well, let's try backing this up. I mean, if you were looking at a telepresence system, these fancy telepresence systems, remember that would be installed in a single room, right? So you'd see what was in the room, and if it's not in the room, you don't see. So the same would be more or less true of a webcam, right? I mean, the webcam is going to be mounted. Now, you could say, well, you could have people give us a virtual tour, a camcorder or webcam moving around throughout their facility, and maybe you could make that work. But you're only going to see what you see there, and it's not. It's like looking out of a porthole on a boat. You don't see the whole ocean. It's not the same view as you would get if you were standing on the deck of the boat. And that there's some potential for, I don't know, lack of complete transparency might be the phrase that you could use. So I really would strongly encourage you, if there is any way you can do it, to get there and visit the facility. I understand it costs a lot of money, and there's a lot of time involved in doing this. It doesn't necessarily have to be done frequently, but I would strongly encourage you to do it. And as I mentioned, I have seen a lot of situations where projects got into some fairly serious trouble because there wasn't that face-to-face trust building and so forth. And I've also seen situations where projects that did get in trouble, we thrashed around for weeks trying to solve it via email and phone calls and so forth. And then I just finally said, oh, well, I'm going. I'm getting on a jet. I'm going. And within days of me arriving, the problems were fixed. So you have to look at, well, what's the cost of potential project failure? So I think that needs to be kept in mind. Now, sometimes the only way that organizations will learn the importance of this is if they have a problem and they realize that we could have solved it if we'd been there in person. So it can be a tough nut to crack. I've got a question from Blessing. Can you elaborate on testing in-house on the slide, carving out the work? Are you recommending to outsource that testing or outsourcing system testing? So to go back to that slide, that's slide number 5, I think, or slide number 8. Yeah, so to go back to this slide here, what I'm recommending is that if say you were following a V model and the project was structured like this, that you would retain the top piece of the V, this stuff up here, in-house. And the reasoning behind that is, well, you've obviously, your organization has to have defined the requirements. Otherwise, the outsourced development organization is not going to be able to build the right thing. And based on those requirements, the in-house test team could then develop the set of tests and ultimately execute those tests when something's handed over. And what I'm saying is that the piece that I would recommend outsourcing is the try to get this pen here. There we go. Is this piece here? I'm saying this piece should ideally be done by an outsourced test team. And now, to the earlier question of, well, could it be done? Could this part be done in-house by the in-house test team as well? Yeah, absolutely. I think that's quite a logical thing to do. I would discourage is allowing the outsourced development organization to own this piece entirely, because I think that there's all these independence issues that I mentioned before. Okay, I got a question from Elham. When first introducing outsourcing to an organization, there's a lot of pushback and negativity as well as fear for loss of their job. What are some of the tips that could help introduce outsourcing within an organization? Well, yeah, there's, fear is a very powerful thing, and this is a really good question. And anytime there's change, there is going to be some amount of fear. And certainly in an environment, an economic environment like the one we're in today, that fear is amplified by the reality that if one were to lose one's job, it would be very difficult to get one back that potentially paid as well. Now, that's not universally true everywhere. Some of our clients are telling us that even in this